All right. Good morning. My name is Ryan Scott. I'm CONNSTEP's Supply Chain Program Manager. I work on the day-to-day supply chain aspects here at CONNSTEP and helping to develop our supply chain offerings, both in the public courses and our offerings for one-on-one manufacturers. So we have services in both those spaces as well. At CONNSTEP, our mission here is to help our manufacturers develop and be their trusted advisor to help them grow and succeed in today's ever-changing landscape. Next slide, please. All right. So a little bit about the Connecticut MEP. The MEP network is a network of centers that help manufacturers across all 51 states or 50 states and Puerto Rico. Each state has its own center, and CONNSTEP is Connecticut Center. We're here to be able to provide you resources to become the most resilient or to become resilient, reliable, and innovative. And we do that through being your trusted advisor and guiding you through what services are right for your business. Next slide. All right, and these are some of our key services that we offer. We offer services within these and beyond, but we just want to highlight these as just some of the main chunks. But if you need more assistance or assistance outside of that, feel free to go to connstep.org and contact us, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction to get you what you need. All right. So with supply chain, the pandemic was really the turning point towards where everyone started looking toward at supply chain. Since then, we've seen a big increase in demand for supply chain related services. And I think it's obvious that there were disruptions, and there continues to be disruptions to this day. Even though we have recovered and in some arguments since the pandemic, we still see issues popping up day to day. And as manufacturers, we want manufacturers to become resilient so that it's not about it's not about adapting and reacting to them. You are better suited to just roll with those punches, and be able to continue with business as usual as a goal. Next slide. All right. And so, supply chain issues can be put into, these three buckets mainly. All of these factors impact your business and your relationships with both your suppliers and customers. Things like long lead times, late deliveries, materials shortages, or even price changes. These factors, whether they're internal or external factors, are things that are important to a business and their reputation with customers and customers and their suppliers. And it's important to be able to, adapt and account for these things so that you can position yourself in a way that you're better suited to deal with them. And with some of these, like material sourcing or price increases, those are things that just can't be avoided. But with those increased costs that are associated with today's ever-changing climate, you can't avoid those, but you can kind of position yourself in a way where you're better suited to deal with those things in other areas, such as what other areas of your business can you improve upon to offset those supply chain disruptions, and so on. Next slide. So just to start off with a little definition, supply chain resilience, according to the Association for Supply Chain Management, is the ability of a network to anticipate, adapt to, and recover from disruptions, right? Resilience, in a way, is your competitive advantage. It is how manufacturers are able to better serve their customers. When you react, if you are able to react quicker in a more agile sense, you maintain better relationships, and that's key. Um, it's the fact that these disruptions won't stop, and being able to adapt and overcome is key here. Um, Things such as delivering products and services to customers on time, on budget, maintaining your customer satisfaction, um, and and overall, you need to be able to adapt, and that competitive advantage is key. Next slide. All right. So overall, nearshoring and onshore, reshoring, the overall, there's been an effort towards nearshoring and reshoring. Nearshoring is when you just move to an adjacent country, and reshoring is moving it to a nearby country or area. So an example of nearshoring would be a manufacturer moving their services from, let's say, somewhere in Asia to either Mexico or Canada if they were in the United States. And reshoring would be, let's say we're in Connecticut and we moved those operations to Massachusetts or New York, for example, right? So I just wanted to establish those definitions just so we are all in the same level there. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of reasons why people would want to move operations back over. But some of the biggest reasons that companies have cited recently are geopolitical shifts. The pandemic was a major thing, right? We just simply couldn't get goods overseas. With all these conflicts that happen throughout the world, those even if we don't face them here in the United States, they still ripple. We still see that ripple effect, right? Disruptions in Europe cause disruptions here. It all cascades through. And then technological advancements here, better manufacturing processes, newer technologies, or other services that might not be offered overseas. That's another reason as well why companies have started to shift towards that. Next slide. All right. So, just comparing the two types of supply chains, right? That you have localized and offshore supply chains. And for every business, it's going to look different, right? There's no universal truth to what is better. You have to look into your product mix and your components and see to do the analysis of what makes more sense for your business. For products such as like a transactional item, like standardized like screws or standardized hardware, it might not make sense from a cost basis to source those domestically. But in other cases, such as aerospace and defense, you may not be able to get those from anywhere aside from the U.S. You have approved supplier lists. There are constraints, and a lot of those are unique to individual businesses. But overall, some of these points that need to be considered are things like lead time, flexibility, risk exposure, and relationship depth. I'm sure everyone has faced lead times overseas being shot up sky high. I mean, if you can't get the materials, you can't make those products, and then it creates a backlog. Flexibility. Let's say you needed a rush order because of an increase in demand. It's going to be harder to get those overseas compared to domestically. It's if you're dealing with a partner in, let's say, Asia, you can't just go walk down the street, drive an hour across the state and sit down in front of that manufacturer. That's one of the benefits you have of dealing locally. You can put a face to the name. And working between time zones as well. You're on the same time zone if you're working within the United States or within a similar time frame. In relationship depth, this comes back to whether these manufacturers or suppliers you're buying from are sourcing or you're using them for parts that are highly specialized, intellectual property dependent, or things that are more transactional. Like you wouldn't prioritize a relationship for something such as like office supplies, like pens, papers. That doesn't make sense. You just go to the supplier. But things like critical components that you need for a certain assembly or a certain product, you want to strengthen those relationships because those are essential to your business. There's an area of mutual benefit for both companies, and being able to identify that and leverage that is something that's critical. Next slide, please. Right. So just nearshoring and reshoring are two in the localization of your supply chain presents benefits in many different areas. All of these are valid criteria, and because of this ever-changing landscape that we're in, as a firm, you need to consider what makes the most sense for you. Do you need to have more responsiveness to market change? Is there does your product see high levels of demand fluctuation? With the localization, you have better control over those disruptions. Because you're closer, that you shorten that communication cycle. Being reliant on distant suppliers, you have a geopolitical aspect that adds another layer of complexity. Going in, ever in this ever-changing world, we're removing the area levels of complexity by localizing it. And working locally, you create almost a sense of community within that manufacturing space where you're able to leverage that partnership. That partnership matters, and having a good relationship with those suppliers ensures that you mutually work towards your collaborative goals. What makes the most sense for you, both of your businesses? Because truly, in a lot of cases, I know that manufacturers, you have key partners, and you want to keep them happy. One hand washes the other. And overall, being more localized, you have a better sight into quality. If there's a difficulty in manufacturing or something, or an issue in the processing or the manufacturing process, you can share your collaborative knowledge and work to develop a solution together. And being closer together helps facilitate that as well. Again, you can go down the street and sit down with your supplier and discuss why you have an issue. Why is this part having a failure? What is that bottleneck in the process? And work towards a solution that benefits you both. And truly, manufacturing, within the past, I'd say 50 years, manufacturing has moved from being more domestic based to being, dispersed throughout the world. And, almost we operate in silos, and we lose that element of communication that provides such a level of strength. And, now with all these supply chain disruptions, it's evident that we need to bring a little bit more of that back. Next slide, please. All right. And then just moving on, some of the benefits of localization, as I've said before, you have faster lead times and improved service. You have cost savings in transportation, and this is a big thing that's ever looming is tariffs. By localizing certain parts, you can, mitigating that is going to be a big driver of cost. It's going to help you drive those costs down and help offset any material related any price changes due to materials or shortages because of those tariffs. Though we can't control you can't control that cost in that area, but by improving your processes and others, you can help to offset that. You also have better compliance and control. And that comes back to that level of transparency and communication. And you see a little bit more of environmental stability and sustainability, right? If you're shipping assemblies all across the world, there's an obvious carbon footprint to that. And that if that's one of your priorities, localization can help with that. And also, by establishing that level of communication through localization, you have more of a view into constraints and capabilities and constraints, knowing what manufacturers can and can't do. So let's say, for example, you saw an area where you can expand into, but you're missing some sort of key process, or you need someone to finish the part or assembly. Suppose one of your manufacturers you have for another part has that capability. You can work out some sort of agreement or strategy to be able to bring that in and increase revenue through that. And that's an opportunity you might not have identified because you didn't know that one of your close partners could do it.
Ryan, let me interrupt for
Sure.
a second. I know that there's a guest that has a question about the tariffs, and especially with Canada and Mexico, with all of that nearshoring and reshoring, and like what kind of recommendations they have. So I do know that there is a Build America, Buy America legislation in which there's a lot of entities that are working with that in order to already do that. We work with the NIST MEP, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, to help with those kinds of requests when you are doing and you are establishing the Build America, Buy America certifications and things like that. We could help you, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the CONNEX marketplace a little bit later on in this webinar. But we also can help individual companies with our network that is a national network that we mentioned earlier in this. So I hope that answers a little bit of the question, but please hang on because we will be talking a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, through the NIST MEP network, one of the services that is offered is supplier scouting, and we've seen a large uptick in requests for Build America, Buy America compliant goods, and those are people or companies requesting American-made goods. So there is a demand for that, and there is a clear shift towards companies wanting to have these goods made in America to circumvent that risk and that cost associated. So if you're looking to move any operations back domestically, that is something that we can do, and we're open to that discussion to help you find the right people to help reshore that process, right? So manufacturers, suppliers, et cetera, we can do that. Okay. Right. But so back to the slides. Overall, this localization points more towards having an ecosystem rather than just a direct purchasing relationship. the there's a benefit outside of cost in these relationships, and it's hard. We're seeing more of a shift towards that intangible relationship, right? The shift of prioritizing the benefits of relationships, and that's something that's intangible, but is highly valuable, right? So it's not just about who can make the part the cheapest. It's about which suppliers are in strategic alignment with your goals as a manufacturer, who you want to have that level of mutual understanding to work towards your goals and priorities. And that's something that should be discussed with your manufacturers. Right. And next slide, please. Yeah, and these are just some high level overviews of success stories stemming from nearshoring and reshoring. Bath and Body Works, they were able to reduce their lead time from 3 months to 21 days by producing in Ohio. We have a Connecticut example here, Carey Manufacturing. They moved their latch production from China to Cromwell. If you go to their website, they have a section on their reshoring efforts, and even in that, they acknowledge that it's a long process. It's not something. It's not like you flip a switch and say, we're going to make stuff in America nowadays. They go into the depth of, it's a strategic decision that they made to plan out for the future and their reliance or their resilience. And even in that article, they acknowledge that they don't know if it paid off, but are still looking into, they're still it's an initiative they have for the future. And the payoff is, they won't necessarily see that payoff now, but are hedging that it will. Whirlpool as well, they nearshored to Mexico to improve efficiency in labor access. And Mexico as well has, Mexico and Canada have the unique advantage. They're the only two countries with direct freight and rail access to the United States. So you see a little bit more of transportation cost, or you see a decrease in transportation costs there because you're not you no longer have to rely on ports, right? You just send it over the border on a train. Next slide, please. All right, and one of the tools we use here at CONNSTEP, and this is something that we have been working with the Office of Manufacturing and Paul Lavoie. This is one of our big initiatives is CONNEX Marketplace. CONNEX Marketplace is an online software tool. I like to describe it as like a LinkedIn for manufacturers. So we have slides going through more of the in-depth, but basically you can search for manufacturers based on capability, certification, what materials they work with, what processes they do. You can also use it for visualizing supply chain risks. There's a supply chain mapping tool as well where you can map out your supply networks, I believe that it is an essential tool for building these localized, resilient manufacturing networks. You can very easily identify many alternative suppliers or alternative manufacturers or a second supplier for a product or a process, right? So if you have to outsource metal finishing and you only have one supplier, perhaps you could add another to build resilience in that capacity. The options are, there's a lot of options to what you can do, but the first step is starting to investigate those and see what makes sense for your business, right? Where do you have weaknesses or gaps, and then search for those, search for companies to help alleviate those gaps on CONNEX. I think that's a very strong use case of the platform. Next slide. So Bernice, would you like to go into a little bit more about CONNEX?
I'll take it from here just very quickly because I know we don't have a lot of time left. CONNEX Connecticut, as Ryan mentioned, is supported and funded by the Office of Manufacturing. It is free for Connecticut manufacturers to match up with other Connecticut manufacturers. And, we handle all of the kind of day-to-day for that. Happy to do a demo. I'm going to show you a few slides to talk a little bit about what it looks like a little bit later on. Next slide, please. So just in a nutshell, some successes. We have 560 Connecticut manufacturers that are listed. Actually, I think that as of today, we might have 563. Easy to connect. We have had some RFIs, RFQs, RFPs, scouting responses. It says here there's 195, but I think that this is a little old. So I think that we have had more than that. Numerous connections with OEMs. OEMs are starting to use this more frequently, and they use to vet a lot of their companies that that they're looking at anyway, looking to partner with. This is a tool to help you build long-term relationships with buyers and suppliers and partners. So right now, in our own state and beyond, we do have, it's only domestic. We do have some success stories with Northrop Grumman, you know, finding 2 suppliers from Connecticut that never met before. We also have had Connecticut to Connecticut matches. You know, we had one instance that we had a company needing a additive manufacturing company that does nylon. Within the end of the day, they had a non-disclosure agreement, and by the end of the week, they had a prototype. So those are the kinds of things and the kind of partnerships that we're seeing on Connect Connecticut. Next slide, please. So if you need a demo, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to do that. Next slide, please. Just a quick little overview of what things look like. These are some exploring manufacturing. This is pretty much our splash page. It does say that we have 2,500 manufacturers. Not all of those manufacturers have developed their profiles. So when we say that we have 560, those are registered manufacturers that are starting to build out their profiles, that are starting to match up with other companies. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like on the Exchange Center. So currently we do have a lot of things that are being sought after. I know that there's things like specialty bearings and copper brush bar that are being worked on right now. We also have things from our national supplier scouting, as Ryan mentioned, as well as surplus equipment. Our research area on this is not developed yet, but it will be very shortly. And also we are going to be adding a feature on workforce, and that's going to be coming out hopefully later this spring or early this summer. Next slide, please. And this is a profile of what a company might want to, you know, develop their profile. They have an about statement. These are all keywords searchable. So, you know, you can spend some time. Ryan and I are always available to help. We have some how-to guides to kind of help you with that as well. So you can build a profile that's going to be, you know, highlighting your business. Next slide. This is a little more of a profile. Next slide. And I think that that's the end of the slide. So next slide. Ryan, back to you.
Yep. So taking all this together, you know, relationships are key. I think in the pandemic marked a shift towards prioritizing relationships, you know, developing relationships instead of for beyond being transactional, right? Beyond just submitting an order and getting it and paying them. You know, the collaboration aspect is key. You can co-develop, you know, some steps to start building out better supplier relationships include co-developing solutions through ongoing supplier dialogue, joint training and workforce initiatives. You can share your knowledge to be able to you know, let's say someone has a better process for finishing a part. You can help that help your partner with that process and help to diagnose any issues that stem from that. You can host quarterly supplier performance and improvement meetings, develop contingency plans collaboratively, and then promote cross-sharing of operational improvements. These are just some starting points. Like I've mentioned before, supply chain development is a process. It's a process of continuous improvement and having that level of introspection and understanding of your business and taking the time to understand it to see where you can grow and you can improve to maximize your supplier relationships and your relationships with the customers who buy from you and the customers you buy from, right? Across the board, managing those relationships is key. Next slide. All right, and then some action steps, right? So how do you get started? Some steps towards supply chain excellence include auditing your supply chain, identifying reshoring opportunities, and lastly, strengthening collaboration with existing local suppliers through dialogue and shared initiatives. The first step really look at having an understanding of your supply chain in full, right, is a step, and then you can dive into individual parts to see to better understand individual relationships and work it up. But like I've said, it's a process and it's something that companies work on continuously. Resilience comes. You have to build up this resilience, and it's something that manufacturers, even established manufacturers, have struggled with. But it's an initiative for the future, and it's a cause that's worthwhile for both you and your customers. Next slide. Right. And overall, CONNSTEP, we are here to help with any supply chain needs you have. We can help you identify, understand your needs, assess your level of maturity in your supply chain, what areas you could improve upon, identify and implement countermeasures. We're here to help you every step along the way. CONNSTEP.help is our webpage, or is a help link where you can contact us either by phone, text, or email. And I believe on the website you can submit. There's a form that you can submit asking for help. But regardless, we try to provide you numerous ways to contact us and make sure that you can get the help you need. So yeah, if we move on to the next slide, I believe that has a little bit more information. Here's my contact information if you would like to hear more about our supply chain offerings. And again, there's our main website, CONNSTEP.org, and then our help page, CONNSTEP.help. And yeah, I think we're going to move into.
I just want to add a few things. One thing that we have found when we have helped some of our clients with assessments with their supply chain is we've identified and uncovered things that would make them a little bit more resilient as a supplier. Like for example, we had one company who identified that he needed to do more work on the quality management side, and we were helping him with that. So one thing that we do is we look at the individual situation when we come and help you with your supply chain, and sometimes we uncover other things. But right now I know that there's a lot of questions on tariffs, especially to Canada and Mexico. We're keeping our fingers on the pulse about that. We don't have a lot of direct information, but, from our federal partners. But once we get that, we will be sure to, share with our CONNSTEP community as well and work with our manufacturers in order to mitigate anything that would be, something that they would need to have our help with. I know that because of Build America, Buy America, with the NIST supplier scouting, a lot of that has been trying to build up Connecticut, but not only Connecticut, but nationally, the manufacturing capabilities in the United States. So if there's something that you find that you need that you can't find, that's not, that's outside of the country, let us know and we'll try to see if we can identify a partner for you in the United States, hopefully in Connecticut as well. And we're open for questions.